Lynn Smith of Buy the Block has taken on one of the noblest challenges in real estate finance today. She has founded and operates one of the very few funding portals that allows developers to raise money online from everybody, accredited and non-accredited alike. Welcome to the National Real Estate Forum.org podcast, episode 237. Hey, thanks for joining me today. I'm Dr. Adam Gower, and this is the National Real Estate Forum.org, where I speak to the leaders of the crowdfund real estate industry so you can learn how to raise capital, build wealth, and earn passive income from crowdfund real estate deals. As you know, I've been tracking crowdfund real estate for a couple of years now, at least, and it's apparent that actually it's so new, this industry. It's so new that a lot of people don't actually really understand what real estate crowdfunding is. It seems to be convoluted sometimes with the idea that real estate crowdfunding has something to do with Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Of course, it couldn't be anything more different. So to clear some of the fog around crowdfund real estate investing, I've put together a webinar for you that explains what it is, where it comes from, and why it's such an extraordinarily exciting way to invest in real estate, brand new way. So go to the show notes page for today's episode at the National Real Estate Forum.org website, nreforum.org/buy-the-block, and register for the webinar at the top of that page. It's totally free and includes some amazing hidden secrets in this brand new industry that are hidden in full view of everybody. Right? Some of the best things are there right in full view. It's really easy to miss them, and I explain what those are in this webinar for you. So go ahead, register at the National Real Estate Forum.org/buy-the-block using the box at the top of that page. And that's spelt buy the block as in B-U-Y, the block. Lynn Smith is one of the most courageous entrepreneurs in the real estate industry today. She really is. Her funding portal has opened the door for everybody to raise money for their deals. And by doing this, she's created opportunities for everybody to invest. It is an incredibly difficult hurdle to become a funding portal. And Lynn, in my conversation with her today, does make it seem easy, but I know it's a lot of work and very, very challenging. She's done an amazing job. Be sure to check out the show notes for today's episode at nreforum.org/buy-the-block, not only for access to the free webinar on the background hidden secrets, but also to find out more information about Lynn and her platform. Here she is.
Thank you. Okay, well, I've been in the crowdfunding space now for a little over 10 years. So transitioning to Buy the Block was just a natural transition. I've run a crowdfunding platform now for 10 years plus. It is Evonomics. It's available to the community so they can raise funds for different projects, community causes, businesses, nonprofit, et cetera. So upon being in the crowdfunding space, always knew that this was something that was going to be able to pass at some point and be available to the community, basically crowd investing. So I've always eyed it, paid attention to the laws, making sure that I understand what's going on and wanted to make sure that this opportunity was available to other communities as well. So they can be able to invest with each other, so they can support each other, so they can develop their community with and having a say if they want to leave a neighborhood or having a say if they don't want to leave it, so being able to say that, okay, if this building is up for sale, we can actually pool our monies together and be able to purchase a property and have it as part of the keepsake of the community. So having that option is why Buy the Block exists. And this is how I got here.
All right. Well, fabulous. Yeah. So let me ask you, when you say you've been in crowdfunding for 10 years, what do you mean exactly? Because when I think of crowdfunding, I think of the regulation crowdfunding that was under the 2012 Jobs Act. It wasn't promulgated for at least 2 years after that, was it? So you're talking about the regulation crowdfunding that was under the 2012 Jobs Act. It wasn't promulgated for at least 2 years after that, was it? So you're talking about something somewhat different, aren't you? Pre-Jobs Act. Tell me what that was.
Pre-Jobs Act, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, that's the pre-Jobs Act. The crowdfunding itself has been around longer than the regulation CS. So it basically piggybacked that idea. Back in 2009, that's when crowdfunding online got very popular. You know, the Kickstarters, GoFundMe, Indiegogo of the world started these portals basically where you can raise money to do anything. Basically, you go to these sites, you set up a campaign, and you can allow the crowd to put money in it. So that's what I've been in. That's the space that I've been in, and I've been in it for a while, managing my own platform.
And so, why did you decide to move into real estate? And actually, you set up a funding portal, didn't you? So, tell me about that story.
The purpose of that is specifically to be able to allow people in the community to crowdfund and crowd invest the properties in their community. Gentrification has been a huge issue in predominantly Black communities. So I wanted to be able to provide an avenue for our community to be able to say we're either going to play a role in it, or we're actually going to be the ones that are actually building this community, as opposed to watching everyone come in, take the properties, sell them off, and redevelop it, and then relocate the people that live in the neighborhood. So it's, the neighborhood that I grew up in has experienced a lot of gentrification, and neighborhoods that I've lived able to provide a resource for our community to be able to have access or take or be able to actually obtain the monies to get those buildings or be able to obtain those properties and purchase those properties and be able to keep keep those buildings in the community and keep the ownership of those buildings in the community. That's how by the block exists.
Okay, so now you mentioned that this was Black communities. So tell me a little about that as well, because it is unusual, right, that you do have this, cultural nuance as well. It's the only crowdfunding website that I'm aware of that is specifically oriented to one particular community. So tell me about that and what drives that and how that works on a practical basis, right, when you're advertising deals online.
Well, being that I am a woman of color and I have lived in these neighborhoods, I've seen it firsthand, and being able to actually witness what happens, seeing or being displaced, being moved, being not part of the development process, but just being on the outside looking in. So this definitely put a sense of urgency for our community, or to be able to have a solution for our community. There's a lot of people that when these things happen, they may not be able to they don't have the capital, they don't necessarily have they may have the skills, but they don't necessarily have the capital. They don't necessarily have the circle of people around them, or the group of financiers to make sure that their deal can close and be able to develop that specific building or that project. So this is what By the Block is about: being able to one, provide access to capital for these developers that a lot of times the doors are closed on them. The banks don't really lend to them. VCs don't always, extend a hand to them. So we want to make sure that we are there. They have an alternative source to be able to acquire those buildings, get the funding, and then close on them. And then, of course, keep that in the neighborhood and keep that ownership in the neighborhood. Because, like I said, a lot of times we're on the outside looking in, or we're on the inside and we're getting shut out of these developments.
Interesting. Okay, so what are the biggest challenges that you've found actually when you started By the Block? Because again, you set up a funding portal, didn't you? And funding portal is you are a member of FINRA. You report to the SEC. A lot of regulations that surround that. It's a very you picked a tough way of entering the crowdfunding space on the real estate side. So tell me why you chose to go with Regulation CF and set up a funding portal and not just set up, a marketplace for accredited investors, for example.
The reason for Reg CF is because we wanted to be able to open it up to everyone. And that's what Reg CF does for By the Block. Allow anyone in the community to invest with as little as $100 to be able to actually be a part of a development. Accredited investors, opening it up only to accredited investors is a very small pool in the Black community. Not saying that they don't exist, but it's a very small pool. So we wanted to make sure that we can open it up to a much larger audience, a much larger group of people.
Be sure to go to the show notes page for today's episode for access to my free webinar on the background of the real estate crowdfunding industry, where I reveal a couple of hidden secrets that actually are not so amazingly hidden, but can be missed. Some very valuable information there. And you can find that at the show notes page at nreforum.org/bytheblock.
Now are you, just drilling down on this point. So your Regulation CF funding portal, which means that you can solicit investments nationwide. Do you only accept sponsors who are African American or of color? And do you only accept investors who are of color?
We're open to everyone. We are open to everyone, but we do have a niche market, and that niche market is to serve our community. And our community can be of any color. I mean, we're open to anyone. Sponsors can come from any area, and they can also come from they can be any color. We're not closing our doors to anyone. Absolutely not.
And how has the community responded to your efforts?
So far, so good. There's still a lot of education to go around. We definitely want to make sure that everyone know what they're participating, understand the rules and the regulations and so on. But so far, so good. It's been very receptive. The community has been very receptive. Just as anything, because it's very new, it still requires a lot of education for the investors, for the sponsors, to make sure that they know that that they're following all the rules that are required to be able to do this. But so far, so good. Yeah.
It's complicated, isn't it, Lynn? What are the biggest challenges then? What are the things that you find? Let's start with the sponsors and challenges that you find with sponsors. What are, in terms of finding them in the first place, but then in terms of navigating them through the process?
The biggest thing, I think, is the confusion between crowd investing and crowdfunding. Everyone knows what crowdfunding is and how to do that. I mean, I think, right?
Well, what is that difference? Go on. That's an interesting nuance that you said. What is the difference between crowdfunding and crowd investing?
Crowdfunding is donation reward based. So, for example, you put up a campaign, and I donate $100 to it, and for donating $100, I get a T-shirt and a plaque or something like that. But you still get part of the proceeds you still get towards your business or being able to create a model or a prototype of something. Because a lot of crowdfunding is used for the prototype. So I have this great idea for a watch, and here's how people can, here's how I can get it developed. People can pre-purchase it. It's under it's an idea. It's a mock-up. But then when it does produce, here are the people that actually get the actual watch because they were the first people to buy into the concept. Crowd investing is slightly different. You are actually, instead of getting the watch or the T-shirt or the plaque, you're actually owning shares in the actual project itself. So at some point, once the project, becomes fruitful or it actually, it earns a profit and it generates revenue, you can be an actual shareholder and earn dividends from it. So that's the difference between crowdfunding and crowd investing. And I think that's where there's a little bit of confusion that people think crowdfunding is or you're crowdfunding, basically. If I'm putting money, so it means I'm donating. But no, you're not. You're actually investing.
And that's the investors. That's the investor side, right? That have that.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So then, what about on the sponsor side? What are the challenges that you find with that? First of all, what kind of deals do you look for, and what kind of traction have you been getting so far? Because I know that you're fairly recent, aren't you, Lynn, since you opened?
Yes. So the deals are very community oriented. So, for example, if it's something that actually solves a problem, or, for example, grocery stores solving food desert issues, for example, redeveloping land to provide affordable housing. So these are the type of deals that come to Buy the Block, and these are the type of deals that we actually through the network.
And how do you screen deals?
I mean, the screening process is very, very long and tedious. We have to work through all the documents, make sure that, that it is a legitimate company. We do all the required checks and form that FINRA requires, the SEC requires us to do. And then we also do we have an underwriting process where we actually go over every deal and make sure that it can be profitable for the investors as well. And then from there, once it gets through the underwriting process, then we can determine if it will actually be a deal that we can host or not.
And how many deals do you see? Let's say, how many of the deals that you put up on Buy the Block that make it all the way through to issuance of securities? How many do you see that you reject relative to those that you actually accept?
It would be around 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. 6, and mainly because they're not quite sure what they're getting involved in. Because, like I explained earlier, that they're thinking it's a crowdfunding campaign, and they don't actually know that there's more. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scene before an actual offer or a project gets put up. But yeah, I would say 6 out of 10.
Now, can you talk about specific projects, Lynn? Are you able to do that?
Not necessarily, but we do have a lot of projects on there. We have projects, and we do have more coming. So,
that's fantastic. All right, you can't talk about specific projects. Okay, I know you can't do that. All right, so what about tell me about the range of sizes of projects that you have. You can talk about that just kind of general. From
under 100,000 to millions. I mean, it really depends on the project. Some require more capital than others. I mean, building a single family development it's in the millions as opposed to in the 100,000. So the range is very, very wide. It really is. But we have some really great sponsors and developers out there that are definitely using this model to be able to acquire properties and be able to develop their community. So it's a wide range.
And what about geographical locations? Have you found that most of your deals are in a specific location or type of location around the country, or in a particular city? You're in Denver, aren't you?
Yes.
Denver, aren't you?
Yes. They're coming from all over. There's not a specific geographical location. They're coming from, Texas to Florida to Washington. I mean, they're coming from all over. So I think that's a good thing. Our reach is very, very far and wide. So,
it's fantastic. Yeah. And are they primarily African American sponsors that come to you? Is it through the community that you attract sponsors in those cities?
They're not primarily. We've had sponsors that come to us that are not African American, and they found us through whether they've found us online or they found out about us through other networks that either shared our story at some point. But we've get quite a few, very ranging, the Hispanic community, African American community, everyone has been, we've been able to get people from all over walks of life.
And what kind of marketing have you found is the most effective for investors? Because once you get the sponsors up online, you've obviously got to raise the money. So
right,
about
right.
What do you do and what's been effective for you in raising, or at least in generating investor interest?
It really is up to the sponsor. Honestly, it takes a lot of work from the sponsor to be able to put themselves out there and talk about what they're doing and get people excited about what they're doing. So that's what gets the most attention. So we really stress to our sponsors to be out there, get people knowing what you're doing, how you're doing, and let them know that there's an opportunity available. Just get yourself out there, get what you're doing out there. That seems to work better than anything. Nobody can explain what you're doing better than you. I could talk about it and I can say, but the only person that can really explain what you're doing is the person that actually came up with the idea, the CEO, the president of the company. So that's something that I really encourage the sponsors to do, is get themselves out there and let the community fall in love with them.
Gosh, that's really interesting. So the sponsors actually do their own marketing, do they? What do they do? They do marketing and then point to buy the block to find more information. Tell me about that.
They do. They'll put up, whether it be, they talk about it through an interview or any platform that is open, or any platform that is open to, or some sort of shared link program and then they'll point to and they'll say, for more information, like you said, visit Buy the Block. And that's how they drive, investors to it. Because once investors get there, they read the information, they download all the documents, then they get an idea, get a better sense of what's being offered to them. Oh, yeah.
And so presumably some of your sponsors are really good at that and some are less good at it. What are the ones that are really good at it doing that the others are not doing? How are they being more efficient at getting their name out there?
That's an interesting question. They're not afraid to put themselves out there. They're not afraid to talk about what they're doing. They're not afraid to get people to understand what they're doing. If they are buildery, this is what I've been doing. This is the work that I've done before. And here's the next project I'm taking on. So that's the difference between a sponsor that really gets the word out there and one that don't. The ones that don't do very well are the ones that don't talk about it at all. They don't really let the people in on what they're doing, or they're not comfortable putting themselves out there and talking openly about what they're doing.
So when you say putting themselves out there, you're talking about webinars, emails, advertising, online advertising. What kind of methodology are they using to get that message out?
All of the everything that you just mentioned, the webinars, email, talking about interviews, being able to writing articles, getting people to write articles about them, those type of things. So all of those methods that you mentioned.
Oh, that's
being able to writing articles, getting people to write articles about them, those type of things. So all of those methods that you mentioned.
Oh, that's interesting.
And more.
Goodness, that's okay. That's very interesting. Now, what about the types of development? What kinds of developments have you seen are the most popular with investors?
The types of developments are more, I would say it's not even the development itself. I would say more of a range. It seems as though the lower the goal is, the closer, the easier it is to reach the goal. The investors are more likely to fund it. No, yeah.
So if they think that there's a higher chance that the deal will actually happen, they're more inclined to invest.
Yeah.
So you've had better success with smaller deals, have you?
We've had success with both, but it has to get to a certain point before people really start, rallying around it.
Okay. So as you were on a day-to-day basis, what are the biggest challenges that you face, just on a day-to-day basis? What keeps you busy during the day, and what keeps you awake at night thinking about what you should be doing the next day? Right.
That's answering emails.
Really?
I answer a lot of.
I never text. I'm all thumbs with text. I suppose that's what texting is, right? You're all thumbs.
But yeah, that's really, I get a lot of emails, and a lot of them are general questions, or people just really wanting to know a little bit more information. But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
How many staff do you have, Lynn? It's not just you, is it? Surely.
4 of us, all in total.
Oh my goodness! Wow. So it's hardly any wonder that you're talking to me late in the evening. You have no time for anything at all, do you?
So the days are very busy.
So what are your aspirations? What's your dreams? Let's say, where would you like to see Buy the Block in 5 years from now?
5 years from now, funding, millions of dollars worth of development, and being able to make sure that sponsors are holding their end of the bargain, and that the investors are actually, seeing the reward for taking risks, basically. So yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what I would like to see 5 years from now. Just being able to make sure that everything that these sponsors say that they will do, they're holding up their end of the bargain, and investors are seeing the reward for what they're for taking the risk on the sponsors.
Lovely. What do you think is the state of the real estate market at the moment? Where do you think we're headed overall with the kind of big picture real estate market?
Right now, it's a little undetermined. It's hard to say where it's going. I have seen some areas, but I think for the most part, it's still pretty steady. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to determine which way it's going, because there's a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's still a lot of hope. There's still a lot of people that are in the market that are buying and selling, and still able to generate revenue and be able to do what they want to do in the real estate market. But it's hard to determine right now. I think we have to wait and see. I really do. I think we have to wait and see.
What daily habits do you have that make you and your business successful and productive? What personal habits do you have?
Wake up and
What habits do you have?
Wake up and
get out of bed and brew a pot of coffee. That is the first thing every single morning, or at the wee hours of the morning. That's part of my routine. That is what I do, and then I crank up the PC. First you crank yourself up.
Yes.
Well, you're actually the second person that said that, and I must confess that I am dysfunctional without caffeine in the morning, so I completely understand. All right, good, lovely. All right, so my second question: what has been the hardest lesson that you have learned in real estate?
Ooh, the hardest lesson. Don't force it. I think that's the hardest lesson. That's the only way that I can, but don't force it. If it's the right deal, you have the right people around you, it will work out. Don't force it. I mean, of course you run all the numbers, but don't try to force it. So, because I know we get into this mode where we're going to close this deal no matter what, and we're going to make this work, but don't force it. Don't force it. That's it. That has been one of the hardest lessons, I would say, for me. Mm-hmm.
All right, lovely. And so my last question, third and final question. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody who has not yet invested in real estate online, but is considering investing, what would that advice be?
I would say do some homework. Get familiar with the language of real estate. Understand what it means to be part of a real estate syndication deal. Do some homework first before you jump right in. Because once you do your homework, then it makes that decision becomes a little bit easier for you. But do your homework. I'd say definitely do your homework. Read, order some books, read some books, make sure that you're comfortable with what you're getting ready to do, and make sure that you know a little bit more than just putting your money in. That's all.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Lynn is one of the hardest working professionals in the real estate industry today, and I'm actually delighted to have finally had the opportunity to have spoken to her and to hear what she has to say about her platform. She was really kind enough to speak to me from her home late one evening, and so thank you, Lynn. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure. And also to you too, thanks so much for listening in. Don't forget to check out the show notes page for today's episode at the National Real Estate Forum.org website, nreforum.org/buy-the-block, to find out more about Lynn and Buy the Block, and to register for the free webinar on real estate crowdfunding so you can find out more about the background to the industry, where it came from, and how you can benefit from it. Just go to nreforum.org/buy-the-block and register for that free webinar using the form at the top of the page. My next guest is Peter Asmus of Green Zone 360. Pete is a force of nature. He manages one of the largest real estate groups on LinkedIn and is one of the pioneers leading the charge into the emerging world of legalized cannabis cultivation. Be sure not to miss that episode by subscribing to the series at the National Real Estate Forum.org website, nreforum.org, and hitting any of the links that I've included about halfway down the homepage. Hey, thanks for tuning in, and really thank you also to Lynn Smith of Buy the Block for sharing your time with me today. Until next time, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.